Sameach. 4 more days. This is a Purim celebration. Why do we have Haman Tashin? Oznei Haman. On Purim. Amen.
I've been doing it every time I bought them.
Hey, give me one. I'll taste it. Is it chocolate? Is it chocolate? Say that I'll have one. Just don't give it to me if it's those poppies. Who eats poppy seeds? It's before if chocolate was invented, I think.
You're not going to pass that drug test,
It's true.
I know.
I saw a video. A guy actually did it.
What's the deal that if you eat poppy?
Poppy seeds contain a
Quieter.
That's also found in heroin. And if you eat enough poppy seeds, then when they do a urine test for heroin, you can come back positive. And I saw a video on YouTube where the guy did this. He got a professional blood test at a clinic, or urine test at a clinic for drugs, and he ate a number of poppy seeds, and he came back positive.
That's not a good thing.
No, it's not. There's legitimate consequences of it.
You're saying that all those athletes in the Olympics, and they get caught, they said, it was Purim. I was eating Haman Tashin.
It's a good idea.
That's it. Okay.
Is that why poppy seeds is such a big thing at baseball games?
Is what a big thing?
Is poppy seeds a big thing at baseball games?
Poppy seeds? I don't know. I've never seen it. But
Yeah,
sorry? You can do what you need to do, yeah. So, we're continuing on the laws of kashering a kitchen. We're almost done. We're going to go through each and every part of the kitchen and how to. Thank you. I'm good. I had more than enough. Thank you. A hat. Anybody see a hat? There's a Haman's hat with 3 points. If you're interested. I don't see one. I'm sorry. It's okay. But first we have to learn about the last method of kashering dishes. We learned about Haggalah, and we went through all the different stages and exactly how to. You guys all got your diplomas. You're all certified to oversee kashering of using the method called Haggalah with boiling hot water. But now we have to talk more about the method called Libun. We started to talk about it. We didn't finish. We'll finish it up today. And what is a good example? So we said, of course, you take a blowtorch, and you make it white hot. And then it's kosher, the vessel. Only vessels which are not going to get ruined, obviously. What happens is, and this is a common problem, one of the hardest things to kosher, so we spoke about ovens themselves, the oven themselves. Some people say you can't kosher it because if you take a blowtorch to it, you'll toast it. It'll be ruined. Others people say, no, there's something called libun kal. Libun kal, it doesn't have to get so hot. All you have to do is heat it up to the same heat that it was used with. The way it absorbs taste, that's the way it releases taste. And so we said some people are lenient, and therefore you just turn on the oven to the highest temperature and that it was ever used with, and then it will release all whatever taste it has in it. Yes?
What if you line it with the thick aluminum foil, not the thin stuff, with the thick stuff? So now you have a clay that's inside a clay. Is that still an issue?
A clay inside a clay. Yes, some people say that's what you have to do. Some people actually do that. You can buy special inserts for your oven, and because they hold you can't actually kosher the actual oven, but if you put in an insert, you're good to go.
The convection oven. Is that a separate issue?
It really is a question of whether it reaches the only type of oven which might be special, as we said, is a self-cleaning oven. Self-cleaning oven actually does reach the heat.
My question on the convection, though, is you're circulating air behind the areas that you can really get to. I assume there must be some contamination.
The only difference is whether it gets to the appropriate heat or not. Whether you can kosher it if you hold it, all you need is libun kal. You can kosher it. If not, then you can't. That's doesn't matter whether there's the fan in there. It doesn't increase its heat or decrease it by anything significant, at least halachically. Okay, so that's about the oven itself. There's one other item that we have to discuss now, and this is the trays of the oven. Right, the oven that usually has ridges on the side, and then there's like a tray or a grate, a grill, which holds the food. And this is something I got to tell you a story. I got to tell you a question first before.
Well, I wanted to know about certain stuff like cheese toasters.
Same halacha. You got to clean it out and turn it on the highest, and it's kosher if you're lenient.
Even if it only has one setting, like it just turns off.
Whatever the setting is, turn it on the way it was used is the way it's gonna become kosher as well. That's libunka. Now, some people say it's especially true about our ovens today because we don't actually put the food on the oven on the bottom of it or on the sides. Right? In the olden days, there were ovens which you took a dough of a round piece of dough, and you would smack it onto the side of the oven. The food was actually touching the oven. There's still some you can see in Jerusalem and some places in the Bukharin quarter where they make pitot that way on the side of the ovens. But our ovens, they really just boxes, that get hot, but the food doesn't actually touch them, so it only reaches them. It's no tein tam. There's many. I'm not going to make a complicated discussion of the kashering of ovens. I told you the two opinions. I think most people are lenient, but there's room to be machmir, okay, about cooking this. What about so in Hebrew it's called the tray. They're called tavniot. And this is the following story. When I was learning the laws of Kashrut to become a rabbi, this was part of the training. And you learn from the sugyot into the Rishonim and the Achronim until the final psak halacha, and then you have to get to practical halacha as well. And I was learning with my chavruta. He's the rabbi of a town in the north now, still a good friend. He became a Breslover chassid, still a good friend. He dresses funny, but that's okay. He's still a good friend. Anyways, and he's a Talmud Chacham, and we were learning, we're trying to figure out this halacha. We're reading all the books about how to kasher, like the how-to books, the practical halacha books. They all say you cannot kasher these trays in the oven. Can't be done. You have to buy new ones for Pesach, or if you get mixed up, you have to, milchik flesh, you can't kasher them. And I don't understand why. And he doesn't understand why. So we go ask our rabbi. The rabbi is the Rosh Kollel of Yeshivat Har Etzion, of Shlomo Levi, big Talmud Chacham. He used to write the questions on these tests for the Rabbanut, right? And he just recently retired. Anyways, so we sit with him and we say, Rabbi, we don't understand why you can't kasher them. The way we understand it, there's no reason it shouldn't be, how do these trays get any taste? It's only by spills or whatever it is. And he's looking at us, and he doesn't understand us. He says, of course you can't kasher them. Why? They cannot be kasher. Why? He didn't let, there was a break, a disconnect, until we figured it out. There's a happy end to the story. There was a cultural difference between the way they use these trays in Israel and in America. And he's also originally American. And we figured it out. And now we understand exactly what was going on. In Israel, it's quite common. Maybe less and less because, I don't know, but you don't have, when you want to bake a cake. So I assume most people think here, you have like a baking tray. It can be round, it could be rectangular, it could be larger, it could be smaller. But you have a baking tray, and then you put in all your ingredients, you mix it up in the mixer, and you put it in, and then you put it in the oven, and that's what it sits on one of these trays, or grates, or grills, or whatever it is. Basically, all the grate or the tray is a shelf. Mm-hmm. Yes. And sometimes, maybe it might spill out from the baking pan, but doesn't always, and sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. And that's what I was thinking when I was learning. That's what I was expecting. It turns out, in Israel, it's quite common when you bake a cake, you don't use a baking pan, which is round, or you actually take the.
Talking about mold. You don't need to use a mold.
You don't use a mold, right? You don't use the mold. You use the actual tray of the oven, the tray itself. You're familiar with this in Germany as well?
When she baking cake, like Russia's, they always done like that.
That's right. You maybe you put some wax paper, you line it maybe, and then you put the batter directly, or if you're cooking food, if you're making anything, you can make meat on the tray itself. On where I only use it as a shelf, it actually has a little bit of a dip, and it's I'm not good.
So that broiler tray you're talking about.
It becomes a clear shot.
Right? It's held up by the oven. There's little ridges here. You know what I'm talking about? And then there could be a higher ridge and a lower ridge. You could fit it in here.
It's very thin, it's very small, right?
Right, so it's a very thin layer, but apparently a lot of people use that as the actual container for the food, or for the liquid, or for the batter, or for whatever it is, and they're actually baking inside this tray, this baking tray. Whereas what I was expecting was that you have a smaller, dish that you put on top of it. Here, it's quite common that you don't have any dish. You just pour your ingredients and your food, your meat, your chicken, whatever it is, and the gravy, cookies, everything on that tray. I don't know if it works faster or not. I don't know. I'm not so experienced in that. Anyways, it is good when you're making a very big cake. But if you want a smaller cake, I don't know how it works, and it comes out very thin that way. But anyways, that's the difference. If you're actually having food directly on this tray and there's no water involved, you're not boiling anything, you're not cooking anything, this is roasting, and this roasting pan, so of course this roasting pan needs libun, it needs to be burnt out by the fire, it needs to be kosher with fire. And of course if you take a blowtorch to these trays, they're going to ruin. And so you can't kosher them, because anything that's going to be ruined, when you kosher it, the rabbis say, we're not allowing you to kosher it because you won't do it properly, and it won't get kosher. And so that's why many of these books say these trays have to be replaced by new trays for Pesach, by new trays if it gave, milchik, fleshik, they have to have separate trays. But if all you're doing is using it as a shelf for another pan, then the only way it's going to get, any taste touching it is by spills, and that means it's liquid, and then so it's not actually used as libun. So there's room to say that all these trays need is libun kal, or even hagala. They can put them in boiling hot water. In any case, this is the difference. The problem is with these trays is that if you use them with food directly, you can't kosher them. Is that clear? Depends how you use them. Which brings us to the next question of another item which is similar difficulty of koshering. I mentioned it before, but we'll just complete the discussion. It's very similar, and that is fry pans. Fry pans, many people fry without any oil, and so it's just like this, like the using the tray in the oven that I was describing. The food is touching. You take many people do because the pan is Teflon and it doesn't need any oil. And why you add oil? If your oil is going to make you fat,
Depends what oil.
Okay.
Oil in specific is very good for adding flavor. Put it in everything.
Could be, absolutely. But some people don't want olive oil taste, and they have other tastes. They have other seasonings. They put the meat directly onto the pan. It's a broiling pan, that's what it's called, and a fry pan. Even if it's not in the oven, it's on top of the stovetop. So how do you kosher that? Well, if it absorbs taste without any liquid, it's only through fire. You have to do libun. If you have to do libun chamur, you have to use the blowtorch. It's got to reach 350 degrees Celsius. That's very hot. That's going to ruin any pan, any fry pan that I know of. And so you can't kosher a fry pan. Some people say you could be lenient. Why? Well, most normal people, like Shua, actually do use oil. And even when you cook up a steak or a piece of meat, the beginning, there's liquid that's in the steak. There's liquids that, the liquids that it's not absolutely bone dry at the beginning. And so there's some liquid there. And what's the majority of as long as, we talked about this discussion, whether you follow the majority of the use or the most extreme use. And some people say you can follow the majority of the use if the majority of the use is with oil. And so it's more like cooking, not like baking, and so you can do it with hagalah. So there's three opinions. Some people say you can never kasher a fry pan. Some people say you can put it in boiling hot water because it's used, always with liquid. And some people say the middle ground is the right approach, and that is libun kal. Libun kal, like we said before, it's bringing it to the heat with which it was used. So if you use it put it on the stovetop, put it on maximum for a half an hour, and as long as it gets hot enough, as hot as it could ever become, that's how it's going to be kashrut as well. There is a definition that people use when we get to libun kal. How hot does the oven have to get? How hot does the fry pan have to get? And the definition there is that if you put a piece of straw on it, nowadays I suggest using a little small tissue paper, the thinnest type of paper, that it will get brown if you put it on a very hot pan or hot metal surface. And so that's called libun kal. That's the level of heat which is enough. And you can be lenient if necessary. If you don't have enough money and you don't have any other fry pan, and there's room to be lenient and say that you can do libun kal on a fry pan, as long as, of course, we said you clean it beforehand and wait the 24 hours, then you do libun kal. But there's a lot of poskim that say that the trays are problematic and the fry pans are problematic, and so just buy new ones for Pesach or if it gets mixed up. Now I'll take questions. Yes, Michael.
So libun kal is like kashering it by hot temperature.
Correct.
With water.
No. I'll review. So kashering, well, it's fun. It's funny using these, Hebrew words in English, but making it kosher, kashering. Okay. Okay. We said that there's three methods. One method is just cleaning. Right? Anything that was only used without in cold or without any heat involved, it doesn't absorb any taste. All you have to do is clean it off, and it's kosher. So that's why. And if you're going to only be using it with cold food as well, so then there shouldn't be a problem of it absorbing or releasing any taste, even if it had taste. But, anyways, for some things you only have to clean. The next method is called hagalah. Hagalah is through boiling water, immersing it in boiling water as we described. And the third method is libun. Libun is burning.
Okay, wow.
We're burning the taste out of it.
Yeah.
Also for 24 hours.
And then we said there's
the cleaning.
There's many conditions. Before you do hagalah or libun, we said for both of these, you should wait 24 hours, and you should also add a little bit of soap in the water. Wait, by libun, soap doesn't really matter.
And it goes back what the Torah said about when you have like gold and silver.
That's right.
Go to fire,
That's right.
And
That's
other
right.
things go to water.
That is the basic principle. The way it was absorbed the taste, that's the way you get rid of it.
And
That's
the word for that concept about going to the fire is just libun.
Correct.
What's called tikkun?
Libun.
Libun.
Libun. Lavan is white, so making it white hot. Libun, lavan. Okay? Is that clear? Yes, Yossi.
Not a question, but just a little point. When you were saying about you put paper next to the oven when you're kashering it to see if it will turn brown. In case that doesn't work, what's nifty to know is that receipt paper, all of it is used with written with a hot needle, so it's heat-sensitive paper. So you can actually use that to check.
Nice, amazing. You'll be able to use a receipt. Okay, hopefully it's not one you need to keep. But Good. Other questions? Oh, comments?
No question.
Yeah.
The leap one is the firing, and what's the addition of the word kal? Leap one kal. Kal means
Kal means light, and chamur means heavy. We said there's two types of libun. Libun kal is light, and chamur is severe, I would say. Severe and light. The severe one is, blowtorch, very, very hot. And kal is whatever temperature it was used with, whatever heat or enough to make this paper, light on fire or be affected, turn brown, whatever. It doesn't actually combust, but the fact that that's the way to measure. Okay, so take a tissue and touch your. Now, I'll just say there is what you should know is that this is increasing levels of severity, right? So anything that needs hagala, you can also do libun on. For sure, if you do libun kal on something, it's going to take out all the taste, even more than the boiling hot water. So sometimes instead of taking my pot that I use for cooking up pasta, right? I have a small pot. The handles are metal too, and not the one with the wooden handles. Watch out! Don't do this with the wooden handles. But what I do, instead of putting it into the boiling hot water, when I'm koshering my oven, turning it on to the maximum for an hour, whatever it is, just put the pot inside the oven. It'll sit there for the hour. It'll get libun kal. It'll get as hot as possible. Is that kosher? It was cooked with water. Yes, because libun kal is the increasing level of ability to release taste. It has more ability to release taste than boiling up hot water, boiling it in hot water. And so that's also if you don't want to, all your cutlery, the custom is we put them into the boiling hot water. Just put them in your oven. It does sometimes tarnish, though, the color of the pots. They get this hue, so you might not be want to do that.
But it's not the end of the world. This is just for cooking. It's not a display piece.
Well, in my house, they're actually out for display. We have quite a fashion kitchen display. But if you want to do hagala, for example, on glass, if you do hagala on glass, Pyrex dishes, put them in the oven, or anything else which won't get a hue or you don't care about it, you can do that. That's what I was saying before. That about those what do we call them? Like the trivet things that hold the pots on top of the fire. The grate. So we said either you could just cover them and not kosher them, or they don't need koshering because they're constantly being burnt out because they're on top of the fire. What about the side areas? So you could actually pour hot water on them. You could do irui, which is the first level of hagala. It's not actually immersing them in the boiling hot water, but pouring. If that's the only way it received the taste, that's the way you can take out the taste. But instead of doing that, you can take the grate, put it in the oven. There, I don't care about the color, as long as it doesn't have any little plastic pieces on the bottom of it, because that'll get burned in the oven, and you'll ruin they'll melt, and it's quite messy.
Indeed.
From experience, I can tell you that be aware. But if you have a total metal grate and that's you just want to be extra careful. You don't want to cover it with aluminum foil. Like I usually do that. I cover it with aluminum foil. But if you don't want to do that, just stick it in the oven. If it fits, it only fits on a diagonal mostly. If the grate is, the width of the stovetop, it's a little bit wider than the width of the oven. If you have a combination stovetop oven, but if you put it in sideways, it will fit. And that's libun kal, which is more effective than hagala, and for sure more effective than irui of the boiling hot water, the pouring of the boiling hot water. So this is, you can mix and match a little bit. As long as you're going for the more severe type of koshering, then you're safe. Obviously, you can't go in the opposite direction. You can't say, "Oh well, I'll take my my fry pan and I'll just rinse it off." Number one, no, that won't be getting the taste out from the vessel. So next thing we're going to do, and we'll take some questions, and then we're going to go through piece by piece of the average kitchen. Everybody's kitchen is a little bit different, and we're going to give you the directions how to make it kosher. This is the hardest part of, and the most intense part of making your kitchen ready for Pesach. Most of you don't have a kitchen here in the Machon, but hopefully afterwards you will, or maybe back home you know that you have a kitchen. It's the same laws for making a kitchen kosher. If you didn't keep kosher beforehand, and maybe your parents' home, and if they're nice enough and they say, "Oh, now my son, I see you want to keep kosher. Let's make a kosher kitchen." How do you kosher a kitchen? So you can call in the local Chabad, and they'll bring in their team of rabbis and blowtorch, and hopefully not make too much of a mess.
Just wrecking ball.
Just wrecking ball, yeah. Or you could follow along. In the next couple of lessons, we're going to go through how to kosher your kitchen for Pesach, practically. Okay, vessel by vessel, portion by portion, and we'll see each type of electric appliance, how it has to be done, each type of plate and dish, and we'll go through, and then I'll be giving you your certificate, your diploma, that you can go and kosher a kitchen. Ready? Questions? Comments? All good. Yes, please.
So, whenever you're cooking in a pan, let's say something like a wok, right? And you start with some oil, but then you dump something in there that essentially absorbs the oil, uses it up, and now you don't have a layer of oil on it anymore. Does that end up becoming an issue where you don't have a liquid on it, and it ends up basically making just direct contact with the pan?
That's exactly the issue we were describing with a fry pan. That's a good example, but it's the same thing. So some people say, because at the later stage of the cooking, it'll all be absorbed, and you have the food directly being in direct heat on top of the wok or fry pan. It needs libun.
Okay.
It needs libun, which in many cases is not practical because the dish, the pot will get ruined, and so you can't kosher it. Other people say, well, you always want it. Majority of use maybe is with oil, and you can be lenient. So there's a few opinions about that, but it's exactly the same issue as a fry pan, as a wok. Yeah. Okay. All right, ready. So let's we'll start to make a list. We'll start today. We have a few more minutes. Now here is a curious halacha. Most kitchens today have a counter where, some people have one side for milk, one side for meat. Some people have an island in the middle of their kitchen. And you'll see my kitchen on Thursday morning, right? It's not the shame. Hopefully you'll come over. And you're cooking, by the way. Did I say? No. Just but, all you have to do is bring a costume. Okay. In any case,
You don't have to wear that costume, just bring it.
just bring it. That's it. So, the kitchen, as we said, why we're paying particular attention to it is because obviously we're learning the laws of koshering, but also because that's where all the food is. Chametz in your bedroom, all right, maybe you had some cookies in bed or something. But it's not usually used for food, but there's, kitchen, there's food everywhere. There's food, and if there's a little cracks and crevices, so you got to clean it out very well. Find those. So the first thing you got to do is clean it out. Now, what else do you need? How do you kosher a countertop? And why would you need to kosher a countertop? Yeah.
Certain things, in marble, you can just pour the hot water on it.
Yeah.
And other materials, you actually can't kosher. You have to just cover it.
Why?
Because of certain materials absorbing.
Like what materials? Wood. You weren't here. What materials cannot be koshered?
My countertops are all.
No, only clay. Wood can be koshered. Only clay. Only earthenware. So, Earthenware is clay. Yeah, you said wood, not wood. Wood can be kosher. Yeah, wood can be kosher. So the question is whether these marble countertops, some of them are plastic, some of them are actual. They come from the ground, and some people consider them to be. There's porcelain. There's actually porcelain. Mostly it's the sinks, but there's some in the olden days. A lot of the countertops were made from porcelain, which is earthenware, so you can't kosher them. But I want to stop for a minute and think about this with you. What do you use your countertop for?
Putting stuff down.
Putting stuff down. Yeah, what stuff?
It's a shelf.
Everything.
Usually it's something that's already on a plate.
Usually there's a plate on it, right? I go back to my story with the culture clash between the different uses, the way we use our ovens and our kitchens. I'd say even here in Israel, even in the Middle East, most people do not put down boiling hot food directly onto the counter. It's usually just like a shelf, like David says. It's a shelf to hold the different pots. Now, it could happen, and it usually does happen, that there are spills.
Right.
But spills, the only way it absorbs taste is by basically boiling hot water, hot spill going on it. So how are you going to get out the taste?
Boiling.
Also by pouring boiling hot water onto it. You don't have to take the countertop and put it into a vessel, because never was your countertop totally absorbed inside a Kli Rishon. So you don't have to do Haggalah in Kli Rishon. You don't have to do Haggalah. You could do Haggalah through Irui. Some people say, though, you can't do the countertops at all because it depends on the material that it's made from, and there's different. Nowadays, there's all sorts of composites where they mix in earth into the with some marble, and so some people say you can't kasher your countertops at all. And there is. I tried to for a long time. I tried to figure out why. Why can't you kasher your countertop? Why are they so machmir? I mean, the only way it gets any taste is through irui, through pouring on. So just pour water on. Some people say, oh, you can't kasher. The only svara, I told it to my rabbi, and he said, maybe. It's a good svara. He doesn't really have a good answer, but it's the custom. Custom in many families is you don't kasher the counter. I don't really understand why. Well, obviously, it's good to be machmir because there's maybe cracks and crevices and holes that you can't clean. Anyways, there is a halacha that says that the rolling pin and the rolling what's it called, the table, the surface where you make dough, actually it's designed for baking bread, that we don't kasher for Pesach no matter what, that we put away. I understand. So but many people when they do bake cake or dough, they do it on the countertop directly. And so maybe it has a status of these vessels which are designed for making bread, which there is the custom that we don't kasher those. So I don't know exactly. That was my idea, a savara. Whatever the reason is, some people don't kasher their countertops. What do?
They cover it.
Just cover it.
People are just lazy.
It could be they're lazy, but no, it could be there's a kashrut concern, and some people say the standard guidance is so we do both.
Right.
We pour on the boiling hot water, we kasher it in case it can be koshered, and then we cover it. And the whole Pesach we keep it covered, and we never see the counter for the entire Pesach. People make fun of it. Every year someone sends out a picture of a kitchen which is looks like a space station. Like everything is a new aluminum foil all over every corner of the counter and so on and so forth. It's a little bit of cover it. Usually a plastic cover is the best. Some kind of these tablecloths that have a plastic covering on. Anything you like, you can cover it with, but as long as it stays on for the entire Pesach. Posek, if you want to follow my guidance, it's either or. You don't have to do both. For many years I did both, like everybody says, but really I don't understand it. And my wife found it very ugly.
tedious.
Tedious was my issue. I'm the one that does the kashering of the but the ugly for the entire Pesach, because you put on a plastic covering and then it falls off. You pull something, a kid pulls. You try to tape it on, and the tape comes off because it's wet, because it's a kitchen. There's always stuff going on. So I gave in, and now I kasher everything very carefully. But we don't cover and kasher. Now the kashering of a counter is a little tricky. Here too, there's more machmir guidance, and there's room to chill a little bit. Some people say you have to make sure that the heat, when you're pouring that hot water on, it has to be bubbling, like we learned in the laws of Haggalah. It has to be bubbling. Well, the minute the hot water from your bubbling kettle hits the surface, it's going to cool down, and it won't be in the bubbling water anymore. It'll be in cold water. So they say what you do is you heat up a stone, like we spoke about when we were learning the laws of Haggalah. You heat up a stone in the fire, and then you take it with tongs, and you while you're pouring the water, right afterwards, you pull that stone around on every surface, on every inch of the surface of the countertop, so that it boils up the water. So now you have bubbling water at every inch of the surface. What I say is, as long as you, I think I described it to you, I use an extension cord for one of these kumim, these kettles, or I use a mecham, whatever it is, that's on, and it's continually bubbling. It hasn't been turned off by the sensor, and I pour on every inch of the countertop while the water is bubbling, and that's kosher enough. And then, if you really want to be lenient, make it easy, you get a steamer. The steamer, an iron steam, by definition, is boiling water, and as long as you make sure that direct contact with every part of the counter, you've kashered your counters, and that's the deal with the counters. One more vessel that we can add in on the same discussion. We mentioned it a little before, and that is the sink. The sink can be made of a number of different materials. It's usually not wood or plastic, but it usually could be steel, could be stainless steel. It's very common, though, to have these porcelain sinks. And what's the halacha about porcelain? Cannot be kashered. Earthenware absorbs and never releases the taste. And so you can't kasher it. But what do we start with? Well, how does it ever absorb taste? It doesn't matter how it absorbs taste if it can't be releasing the taste ever. So if it's porcelain, you can't kasher it, so you have to cover it. You can actually buy in every corner store. The week before Pesach, there's like a plastic bucket that fits the various sizes of sinks. It's an insert, and you use an insert. But luckily, I have a stainless steel sink, and so I do the same kashering like I do with my countertop. Also, I pour on boiling hot water. Of course, it's got to cover every inch, and so it's the same halacha. Some people, like the counters, they do both. They kasher it and they cover. Same thing with the sink. They kasher it and they put it in an insert, but there's room to be lenient to do one or the other, and not necessarily both. Questions? David.
It's only the surfaces you want to use, though. So you have to worry about the splash guard behind the sink. Do you have to worry about a countertop?
Well, if the splash guard absorbed some splashes of a boiling hot soup, it means it absorbed taste. You have to kasher it. So you pour hot water on the splash guard. It's very simple.
We're not going to put food on it, though.
Yeah, but,
there's nothing that's going to deliberately, so we're not simply...
If you're going to be having kosher food right next to this non-kosher splash guard, it could splash on it and come back, You want to kosher the kitchen. You want to use kosher every surface that's exposed. I wouldn't leave an unexposed non-kosher splash guard in my kosher kitchen.
But there's a counter, let's say, that you're not going to use. You don't have to cut. You don't have to do any of these.
Nothing.
It's only if you're going to use it.
That's right.
It's not.
That's
possession.
right. That's right.
You don't even need to cover it.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. We'll stop here for today. We'll continue tomorrow. You have to attend every single class if you want to get the certificate at the end. And you have to pass the test.
So you've already awarded this certificate.
That was only for Haggalah. I did a certificate. And you can all each get a certificate for Libun if you want for today. But for the entire kitchen, the full diploma, you have to come to the next few classes.
Two questions. This